He faked the coma to catch liars, but he didn't expect to hear a confession that would shatter his heart. Everyone thought billionaire Darius King was unconscious, his eyes closed, his body still, but behind those lids, he listened, waiting, watching, until one quiet midnight, a nurse whispered a truth beside his bed so raw, so unexpected it made him question everything: his wealth, his enemies, and his own heart. Darius King had built an empire from scratch, born in the projects, now one of the richest men in America. But when his private jet crash-landed and he was wheeled into a high-security hospital, the world was told he was in a coma. But it was a lie. He was fully awake, silent, still calculating. Why? Because someone had sabotaged his plane, and he didn't know who. The coma was a trap. Cameras hidden, microphones embedded. He waited for his betrayer to show their face and spill secrets in front of the unconscious man. His nurses rotated daily, professional, careful. But then came Nurse Elena Carter. She didn't treat him like a billionaire, she treated him like a man. She hummed old soul songs while adjusting his floor, whispered stories about her childhood, and once even wiped a tear from his cheek when a thunderstorm rolled through. He listened, confused. Who was she really? She never spoke about money, never gossiped with other staff. She moved around his bed like she belonged there, yet something about her felt temporary. Her eyes sometimes lingered too long on the heart monitor. Her fingers, when changing his bandage, trembled not from fear, but from something else: shame, guilt. Darius remembered her humming "A Change Is Gonna Come One Night," soft, almost broken. The way her voice cracked on the high note made something shift in him. He had trusted no one for over 2 decades. Betrayal had shaped his climb to the top, but something about Elena's quiet presence disarmed his defenses. At first he thought it was just loneliness, lying still for days, pretending to be unconscious, not flinching when doctors pricked needles or checked vitals. It drained him. His mind raced while his body played dead. He had expected people to talk, to confess, to slip up, but no one had. The real culprit was still hiding behind fake smiles and clean suits, until one night. She entered at 1:47 a.m. The hospital was silent. Rain painted long shadows across the tiled floor. She sat on the edge of his bed without turning on the light. He felt her breath. He heard the slow sigh leave her chest before she spoke. "I know you're asleep, Mr. King," she whispered, "but I need to tell someone before I break." His heart jumped. "I wasn't supposed to be your nurse," she continued. "I traded shifts with someone, because I needed to see you. I know what happened. I know who tried to hurt you." Darius wanted to scream, to move, to grab her hand, but he held his pose, rigid still, listening. "My brother Jamal. He worked airport security. He was the last to inspect your jet before it took off." Her voice trembled. "He got mixed up with the wrong people. They offered him money, told him it was just a scare, just something small. You'd be fine, they said. But when I saw the crash on the news, my stomach dropped." She reached out, placing her palm against his chest. "I applied to this hospital the next day just to see you, to see if you were okay." Tears welled in her throat. "I'm not proud, I'm scared and ashamed, but I had to know, had to look you in the face." Her voice cracked. "If you ever wake up and you remember this, do what you must. I just needed you to hear it. I'm so sorry." And just like that, she stood and left. Darius didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he opened his eyes. The world erupted. Doctors flooded the room. Nurses wept with joy. Headlines screamed "Billionaire miraculously wakes from coma," but none of it mattered. Not the press conferences, not the flood of fake friends, not even the offers from FBI and private security firms. Elena didn't return. He asked subtly at first, "Where's the nurse from the night shift?" Then more directly, "Nurse Carter, is she off today?" The answers were vague. "Transferred, maybe resigned. We'll check the records." But there were no records. No forwarding address. It was like she'd vanished. Darius launched a private search, quiet, discreet. He didn't want her dragged through media chaos. He wasn't even sure why. Part of him wanted justice, but another part just wanted to see her again. Her trembling voice, her truth, had haunted him more than the crash, more than the betrayal itself. Weeks passed. He recovered publicly, privately. Who visited his jet and confirmed the sabotage. A panel had been tampered with just enough to cause failure mid-air, just as she said. He kept the findings private, didn't go to police. He wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Instead, he made a decision. He called a press conference and announced the launch of the Elena Fund. "For every nurse," he said, "who shows up with more heart than the world ever sees. For those who protect lives in silence, carry secrets no one should bear, and heal wounds no one else can touch." Reporters asked who Elena was. He smiled softly. "Someone who helped me when no one else could." Months turned to a year. Every July 6th, on the anniversary of his awakening, white lilies arrived on the balcony of his penthouse. No note, no return address. Until one year, the card read, "I'm glad you heard me." He sat in his velvet armchair staring out across the city he once thought he ruled. His empire was intact, stronger than ever. But now, there was something deeper. Beneath it, humility, compassion, a new understanding. He had always seen himself as a lion, among sheep, untouchable, untented. But that night, in the hospital, it wasn't a rival who pierced his armor, it was a whisper, from a woman who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. He didn't chase her, didn't hire more investigators, he simply built in her name, and sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, when thunder rolled over the city skyline, Darius King closed his eyes and remembered her voice. Cracked, trembling hue and dot, and in that memory he found peace. It was nearly 2 a.m. The hospital lights had dimmed. Outside, the city sighed beneath a curtain of soft rain, each drop tapping gently against the glass windows of the private suite. Thunder, far in the distance, hummed low like a forgotten memory. The machines around Darius King beeped steadily, one for his heart, another for oxygen, all of them in rhythm, like a song only hospitals could play. The room smelled like antiseptic and wilted flowers. Cards from well-wishers lined the window ledge, though most had come from people who'd never known him. Billionaire, tycoon. The headlines never said man, and in that silence, in that stillness, one figure slipped into the room without fanfare, her steps silent on the tiled floor. Elena Carter. Scrubs slightly damped from the drizzle outside, curls tucked into a loose bun, dark circles under her eyes that told the truth of 1,000 sleepless nights. Her hand trembled as she touched the edge of the curtain and pulled it aside. She didn't speak right away, she just looked at him. Darius King, the man the world worshipped, still as stone in a sea of machines. She sat down beside him, her knees brushing the side of the bed, her fingers clutched together. Then slowly, quietly, she reached for his hand. His palm was warm for a man the world thought unconscious. "I know you're asleep, Mr. King," she whispered, "but I need to say this to someone before it eats me alive." Darius's heart skipped a beat. The monitor gave it away, a soft blip just slightly out of rhythm, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were somewhere else, not on the monitors, not even really on him. "I wasn't supposed to be your nurse," she continued. "I traded shifts that day because I needed to see you." She swallowed hard. Her voice trembled like the rain outside. "I know who tried to hurt you." Darius remained still. His body obeyed the lie even while his soul cried out. Inside, he wanted to sit up, to grip her hand tighter, to ask everything, but he stayed where he was, motionless, listening. "My brother Jamal. He worked security at the airport. You probably don't remember him. He was just one of the guys in the background. But that day he was the last one who saw your jet before it took off. The last one who had a chance to touch it." She looked down, her eyes glistened, her lips quivered, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked like glass. "He got into something bad. Some people came to him, people with money, with pressure. They offered him a deal. They said it was just a warning, that the damage wouldn't be serious, that you'd survive, that no one would find out. They promised him 30 grand. That's all it took." She shook her head slowly, shame washing over her face. "I didn't know, not at first, not until after. He came to me, panicked, crying, told me what he did. Told me he never thought the plane would actually go down, that it was just supposed to delay you, make you miss some deal, make the stock drop. But you almost died." Darius felt his breath hitch. Inside his mind, rage simmered. So it had been sabotaged, and Jamal, the name triggered something faint, a blurry face from the background. He remembered a man nodding at him before takeoff, someone just beyond his field of focus, a man who now lived in his memory, not from guilt but from the sheer closeness of betrayal. "I begged him to turn himself in," Elena whispered, "but he refused, said they'd kill him, that it was too big, that he'd already made the mistake and it couldn't be undone. I wanted to run, I didn't want to carry it, I didn't want to protect him." She wiped a tear that slid down her cheek, then another, her breathing uneven. "I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing your face on the news, so still, so broken, and I kept hearing his voice saying he'll live. It's not that bad. I couldn't take it. I applied here. I had no plan. I just wanted to see you, maybe apologize somehow. But when I got here, when I saw you laying there, I broke." She clutched his hand tighter. Darius, still as ever, felt every ounce of her pain radiating into his skin. It was raw, it was real, it wasn't rehearsed or clever or calculated. She hadn't come with an agenda. She came with a confession. "I didn't even think they'd let me in," she said. "I'm a floater, low seniority, but someone missed their shift. It opened up, like the universe was punishing me, or maybe giving me a chance to make it right. I don't even know anymore." The rain intensified. A bolt of lightning lit up the room, followed by a long roll of thunder that seemed to shake the walls. Elena didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on Darius now. "If you wake up and you remember any of this, turn me in," she said. "I deserve it for keeping quiet, for not doing more, for not stopping him before it was too late." Her fingers let go of his. She stood up slowly, carefully, as though rising from a grave of her own making. She looked down at him one more time, her face contorted by guilt and something else, regret maybe. Grief, the kind of sorrow that couldn't be undone. "I'm sorry," she said again, barely a whisper this time, and then she turned and walked out. The door clicked softly shut behind her. The room was silent, save for the rain and the machines, but inside Darius King, a war had begun, a storm fiercer than anything outside the window. His mind reeled with names, with pieces of puzzle that had been missing for weeks. Jamal, a $30,000 betrayal, a billionaire's life nearly lost for a number that wouldn't buy a quarter of one of his suits. But none of that hit as hard as the sound of her voice, or the way she said she was sorry not for him, but for her soul. He lay there long after she left. Minutes became hours. He didn't move, didn't open his eyes, not yet. Not because he couldn't, but because he wasn't ready. Elena Carter, a name burned into him now like a scar he would carry forever. She hadn't caused the crash, but she had carried its weight. She hadn't sought to save her brother, she had sought to save herself. And perhaps, in doing so, had done something far more honest than most would dare. She had told the truth. He thought about the others, his board members, his legal team, even his friends, how none of them had spoken the truth, how none of them had even visited him without some sort of camera trailing behind. But she had come alone, no glory, no audience, just guilt, trembling in human form. He finally opened his eyes, not for the world, but for himself. Just enough to look at the empty chair she'd sat in. It still rocked slightly, as if her presence lingered in the room. His hand twitched, just once. For the first time in days, he wanted to move, not because of vengeance, but because of something far more dangerous. Because he had heard something he didn't expect to in all the silence, a heart breaking beside his own. The next morning Darius opened his eyes. At first, the world was a blur, shielding tiles arranged like a cold mosaic of survival, fluorescent lights humming with sterile indifference. His eyelids felt heavy, not from sleep, but from the weight of what he had carried in silence. The lie, the waiting, the confession. A soft gasp broke the stillness. Mr. King, he's awake. The room was instantly transformed into a whirlwind of motion, footsteps rushing, machines chirping, monitors being checked and rechecked, and voices layering over one another in disbelief. His lead physician, Dr. Hannah Feldman, stepped forward, with practiced calm, though her hands betrayed her excitement as they hovered above his pulse line. "Can you hear me, Mr. King? Blink once if you can understand me." He blinked once. Slowly, a cheer rose behind the glass. Nurses cried. Security scrambled. Phones began ringing. Cameras outside the hospital were already being set up. The billionaire was back, the miracle coma patient, the phoenix in the flesh. And as everyone clung to their roles, medical corporate, sensational, Darius's eyes drifted across the room. He wasn't looking for miracles, he was looking for her daughter Lena. But she wasn't there, not hovering by the monitors, not standing in the doorway with her usual quiet calm. She hadn't waited to see him wake, hadn't come running like everyone else. He searched each face, each passing glance of a nurse. None were hers. None carried that quiet storm she had carried in her soul. She didn't return that day or the next, he asked in hushed tones, trying not to raise alarms. There was a nurse, Carter, Elena Carter. What happened to her? But no one had an answer. One nurse remembered her vaguely. Another said she thought she'd been transferred. HR looked into the records, but her name didn't appear on the permanent roster. She had been on a temporary night float, borrowed from a staffing agency, and no one knew which one. It was as if she had never existed. He had seen her, heard her voice trembling in the dark, felt her hand in his, her confession. It hadn't been a dream, but the world around him offered no trace of her. Not her apartment, not her phone, nothing gone. She had vanished like a whisper in a storm, and the storm, he remembered, had been real. The thunder, the rain, the way her voice cracked beneath its weight, every piece of it had seared itself into his memory. She had told him everything, her brother's betrayal, her shame, her plea. He had memorized it in silence. Now, with the world watching, he did the one thing they least expected. He said nothing. The media speculated wildly. Darius King, silent for weeks, now resurrected, was expected to make statements about the crash, about the investigation, about the comeback. But when he finally appeared before the cameras, he spoke with measured restraint. No vengeance, no lawsuits, no press releases revealing who had tampered with his jet. He spoke about forgiveness. Some truths, he said, his voice clear but weighted, are too human to punish. Sometimes, the one who brings the truth is the only one brave enough to save you. Journalists pounced on every word. What truth? Who had betrayed him? Why forgive? But he offered no names, no details. The media spun stories of religious rebirth, spiritual awakening, personal transformation. They all missed the real story. The woman behind the curtain, the voice that cracked under the weight of guilt. The nurse who had disappeared into the shadows. He never revealed her name, never turned in her brother. Instead, he turned his attention to something else. Quietly, he instructed his legal team to form a foundation, a charitable organization that would provide financial, legal, and emotional support for nurses, medical staff, and whistleblowers who did the right thing when no one was watching. It was called the Elena Fund. He chose the name himself. His inner circle asked, "Is this someone we should contact for the press release?" He shook his head. She wouldn't want that. They asked again later, when branding consultants needed to know the origin. "It's private," he said. It stays private." The foundation launched with little fanfare, but its mission grew rapidly. Stories came pouring in: nurses who had spoken up against corruption in hospitals, interns who'd reported unsafe procedures, janitorial staff who'd uncovered malpractice and risked their jobs to do the right thing. They were quiet heroes, the kind of people no one built statues for. But Darius built something better. He built sanctuary. Behind the scenes, he continued searching for her, hired investigators, yes, but with strict parameters. No harassment, no pressure, no trails that could be traced back to her unless she chose it. He didn't want to force her into the light. He just wanted to know she was okay, that she hadn't vanished because of shame, that she was safe. 1 year passed. The anniversary of his awakening arrived like a ghost wearing flowers. The city buzzed with news articles titled 1 year after the king woke and Darius King, the miracle man. But on that night, he didn't attend the gala his board threw in his honor. He stayed home, and sometime just past midnight, as a soft drizzle painted streaks on the balcony glass, he opened his double doors and stepped outside. There, waiting quietly, was a bouquet of white lilies. No one had seen who left them. No one had rung the bell. There was no note, just a small card, pressed into the ribbon holding the stems together. "I'm glad you heard." No punctuation, no signature, just that he stood there for a long while, breathing in the soft perfume of lilies and rain. His hands trembled not from weakness but from emotion. The card was creased, handwritten, and he recognized the slope of the letters instantly. Her hand, her voice on paper, her presence in silence. He didn't ask for more, didn't chase it. The card went into a small wooden box in his study locked private, and the lilies, he placed them in a glass vase and set them near the window, where they caught the moonlight and bathed the room in a soft, forgiving glow. That became the ritual. Every year on the night of the storm, white lilies appeared, numbered, name, no cameras, just presence. Darius changed. Too, he stopped chasing the world the way he used to. He still ran his empire, still signed billion-dollar contracts, still wore tailored suits and flew private jets, but there was a new gravity in his movements, a gentleness in his words. People noticed he paused longer during conversations, that he listened more, even in silence. He began visiting hospitals not for press, not for charity optics, but quietly. He would show up on holidays and sit with nurses, ask them about their lives, their families, their burdens. He told them sometimes about a nurse he once knew, not by name, just by heart. They always leaned in. In one hospital, a young woman spoke up and said, "My sister's a nurse too." She said once, "You saved someone's life without saying a word." Darius smiled softly and said, "No, she saved mine." He didn't need to explain. He began writing letters he never sent to her, pages and pages, filling journals with words he wished he had spoken out loud when he lay motionless and listening. He wrote about the moment he heard her say she was sorry, about how her voice broke when she admitted she couldn't sleep, about how he forgave her the second she told the truth, because truth, especially the trembling kind, is sacred. He wondered where she lived now, whether she'd become a nurse again or left the profession entirely, whether she ever read about the Alina Fund, whether she had forgiven herself then 1 year. On the night of the storm there was no bouquet. He waited until midnight. Nothing. 1 a.m. Still nothing. 2. Silence. He paced, sat, stared, told himself not to worry, that people move on, that 1 year missed doesn't erase the others. But deep down, something sank up by dawn. He walked out onto the balcony again. Still no lilies. The wind had died down. The storm had passed. But just as he turned to go back, inside, something caught his eye. A small slip of paper wedged between the railing bars, wet and folded. He pulled it free, hands trembling. It read, "Sometimes silence is the loudest kind of love." He clutched it to his chest in that moment. He understood she was still there, not in the way the world understands presence, but in the way that only two souls who met in the dark could understand. Through memory, through ritual, through trust that didn't need proximity to be true. He smiled, and somewhere, far away, perhaps in a small apartment with humming fluorescent lights, perhaps in a quiet hospital where soul songs echoed softly from behind scrub masks, woman closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm glad you remembered." And for both of them, peace remained, not as an ending, but as the quiet, unwavering beat of a truth once spoken in the dark, and forever heard by the heart. If stories that stir your soul and reveal the humanity behind the headlines move you, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us all, every stranger has a story, and sometimes, healing comes from the most unexpected places. Don't forget to like and share, it means the world.